All right. 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 On the moon. On the moon. All right. Coming on in the moon. On the moon, among the moon. Move it, groove it, steve it, stove it, on it, hold it, sit out on the moon. Okay, so I just got done watching Coraline at the Hollywood Forever with my buddy Kevin Glick and his beautiful wife Avery, and we were celebrating Kevin's 55th birthday, and it was a trip being in a giant cemetery surrounded by dead people, watching a movie that I actually haven't seen since it was released. I think I saw it in 2010. Where did I see it? I saw it, I think, at the Living Room Theater in Portland. And I was not actually really too interested in seeing the film, just because it kind of had I had a lot of bad memories from that film. But I'm glad I saw it, and I appreciated. I didn't see it in 3D, but I appreciated so much about the film, about sort of the way it was designed and presented. Some of the colors, the camera movement, of course the transitions. That film's great with transitions. Some of the foreshadowing is pretty great. And all kinds of, visual motifs like insects and amphibians and rats and mice, and it's a special film. I understand why it's so popular. It's short and sweet. It has its flaws for sure, but it's genuinely, it's very intimate for stop motion. There's a lot of really, really close-ups that, it's photographed so beautifully. And to think that each one of those frames had to be shot a right eyeball frame and a left. And there was a lot of compositing, very sophisticated compositing to do. A lot of painting out all the seam lines and the faces, and it came together beautifully. The soundscape is interesting. Henry understands music and sound effects and how to blend them. I thought it sounded pretty juicy. But there's some things. The ending is a little too trite and upbeat for me. Sometimes at one point it feels like a video game, with the kids with the lost eyes, when their voices come through the objects and they're like, "You only got 2 more, miss." That I think appeals to kids though, because they're in that video game head. It's like a choose your own adventure. And there's some great sequences. Eric Layton's big song and dance numbers a standout. I think Anthony Elworthy did the acrobat scene, which is it's just so beautifully shot and animated, and it just feels like you're soaring. You know, Jeff Riley's other dad playing piano is amazing. The whole spinning room on that is pretty exquisite. And there's some just beautiful, delicate little moments. Trey Thomas's stuff in the kitchen is just fantastic. You know, Anthony Scott did some other mother stuff that's pretty rad. And so, oh man, some of Anthony's like Walking Cat. Sarah DeGodemeyer, good lord, she had some cat shots that were just so scrumptious. Anyway, there's a lot of standout things. You know, a big shout out to like Morgan Hay and Lars Larson, who had a serious hand in some of those weird effects things like the tunnel and the trippy props that move. Kramer, good lord. Again, Kramer with his trippy insect rooms. And Rob Kramer, if you guys don't know who I'm talking about, is just an exquisite painter. Just serious heavy-duty fine artist who can layer paint like nobody. Had a hand in sort of making that insect other mother room kind of transform with the backlit walls and projections and stuff. And I forgot how tight of a film it is. It's, you know, you really cut to the chase. Each line of dialogue has a lot of, you know, meaning. So it's, you know, quite a team up with Neil Gaiman and Henry on the script. Yeah, and I got to put some old, you know, part of the reason I never wanted to see that film was because I just had such a horrible time on it. It was a bad time in my life. I was, you know, splitting up with my wife at the time, but also it was just dark. It was a dark film. It was just a really dark experience. I think a lot of people had the same vibes on that. You know, not to get too into the weeds with that, but enough time has kind of gone by, and you know, you can appreciate that. I think what happens when an artist like Henry is going all in to make something special, it's like no matter what is in his path, he's going to slay the dragon at all costs. And so he did it his way. You know, and you gotta appreciate when artists have, you know, a lot of passion, you know, unbridled passion like that. You know, it's like I think what you see in the work is that passion was because he cared so much. He cared to get each moment right, and he was going to push people to get them where they needed to be. in order to get it right. I'm not condoning some of his techniques, because obviously he crossed the line with a lot of people. But stormy directors cross the lines all the time, and if they make great films, usually the people only really remember the film. We don't care how Lawrence of Arabia was, like what blood, sweat, and tears went into it. We know the film. We know Blade Runner. We know Citizen Kane. When we see it, we go, "Oh, that's a great film. Spare me the trauma and drama. Let me just see this work of art and get lost in it." But filmmaking is hard work. It's a very sophisticated language, and it's subjective, objective. It's but Henry is a very fortunate person to have the support of a studio like Leica behind him. You have Travis Knight setting the bar extremely high with just really fluid, beautiful performance animation. I think he kind of had a lot on the line and was sort of walking the lantern into the dark spaces. Because you have a lot of disparate artists coming from all different walks, sort of trying to create the same movie. So one animator's shot cuts with another animator's shot, and you want those sensibilities to be close enough that it works. And I think that team was able to sort of gel. So Coraline is on the screen, and I just heard a piece of information that in the last 10 years, the re-release of Coraline was the biggest box office success for any re-release movie in the last 10 years, last decade. That's something. So I think it kind of broke even the first round. I think it made money the first round, and once it did Europe and Japan and all that stuff, and then to get re-released, apparently it was sort of remastered too, which is exciting. So I do probably think I want to see it in 3D. Might have to wait until it gets re-released again. Who knows? Maybe it's a seasonal thing. Henry Selick. Nightmare Before Christmas is a seasonal thing, so he's got a couple victories under his belt. And golly, let's celebrate Pete Kazacic. Good Lord, that was a gorgeous film from a master director of photography. I mean, there's so many special things. And it wasn't just one thing or another. There's different environments all over the place. The other house had to look very different from the house. All that kind of foggy gray stuff outdoors and all that moody, when you enter an unfinished home right after a move, and it's kind of dank and hollow, and there's boxes piled everywhere. raining outside. You could feel it in your bones. Of course, I was outside on a blanket, and it was fucking freezing cold, so I could feel it in my bones, period. It was such an appropriate place just for me to revisit Coraline. I think that cold, dank death in the air really helped kind of vibrate into the nooks and crannies of my bones to shake loose all the skeletons and spider webs and, trauma, bad memories. I wanted to have more of an impact on that film. I wish I was in a better place, because I think I was ready to sort of step up and rise to the occasion and be one of like the mighty warriors on it. And it just wasn't meant to be. I kind of got my feet swept from underneath me a little on that. I was on a lot of medication. I was self-medicating. I was depressed. I was acting out. I was being rebellious. I was being a little self-indulgent, maybe here and there. And I was questioning authority, which I do regularly. I don't do well with, the mighty, big, abusive dad energy, I had a ragey dad growing up who could sort of lay me to waste with a good blast. And so I like to kind of meet that. I like to lock horns a little with that shit, because it doesn't break me. That kind of shit doesn't break me. It just my steel gets resolved a little bit, and I just want to clash swords. You know what I mean? I don't think I necessarily dealt with it in the way that would afford me a place at the table. Like, hey, Mish, here's a juicy sequence because we think you're talented. I didn't earn that trust on that movie at all. Not in the slightest. And so, but I got a couple little juicy shots here and there. And I'm stoked to have worked on it. I'm looking back. Met a lot of really fucking cool people on that movie. Really cool people. Just great people. Phil Beglin is right up there. Just so impressed with that guy as a human, as an inventor, as a friend. He really helped me through some dark times. Of course, Bartek was super supportive and helpful and lovely. Anthony was just a mensch. He has he's like a rock. He's steady as a, on the high seas, he's a steady source of warmth and he's resilient, and he's the daddy bear. And so it was nice to meet people. Ian Whitlock was just so lovely to me. He went out of his way to just make me feel special and important, you know. And he was so well thought of, and I think he commanded a certain level of respect, and but he's a humble dude, you know. He's just trying to do great work, which he did, you know. Chris Toodles did some beautiful stuff on that. Yeah, it's a good crew. Suzanne had some juicy sequences. Yeah, I think Riley's stuff really stands out for me. I just like what he does with silicone faces. You know, there's some of those faces are really limited and hard to work with, but when you kind of treat them like almost like a hand puppet, like Other Father's mouth trips me out. Like, you can't really look at it when he's talking because it doesn't have any real, it just has little paddles and shit in there. So it's a lot of open close, and he was using gestures and just very, what do you call it, kind of poignant, or his gestures were sharp and like he found great accents in the dialogue to perform. I love some of the shots of Coraline when she's sitting down for the first time, having that nice, toasty, juicy, warm meal with the other mom and dad. That snorkel end shot going through with the gravy train. Some nice stuff. You know, John Ashley's little under the covers rig. I did a shot that had a mirror in it, and they composited the mirror by indexing the camera. So every frame, they shot the hero angle, right, left, and then the whole camera would move and shoot the characters in their same pose. And they figured out the angle of reflection. You know, where for a fucking Moko shot. It was insane. It was so insane. I was so impressed with that. Sweet Tie, I think, did that. Just the technical shit on that film, the level of technical stuff on that. I think people, you know, it's interesting because we'd go to these animation meetings, and it wasn't like you learned how to do it in the meetings. And this is no diss on Anthony. I think he did a really, he had to thread a needle, politically speaking, on that film, because he had to steady the ship in some really choppy waters, and he had to draw a line between Henry's directing approach, and our morale. And so he had to sort of there was like a steely, stern kind of loving quality that Anthony brings, and it bolstered the troops. You know, he led by example, because he's He's just has this like rocking dignity, and and he has a really strong internal life. You can tell when he goes paddleboarding with his dog, and like, he's just he must find such solace in nature because he's such a strong person. I really admire Anthony, and he stuck his neck out for me a couple times on that movie. So I'm glad I went and saw Coraline. I have a lot of complicated feelings about it, and it's interesting. You work on a film for, I don't know if I was only on it for about a year and a half or something, but you put months and months into a really intense film, and I spent a lot of time kind of on the bench on that film. I spent a lot of time in test stages and doing little effects shots and sitting stuff out. So, every now and then you get the at bat, and I got to clock a couple here and there. I don't think I hit them over the fence, but I scored a couple doubles. And then, I bunted down the third base line, and I think I barely beat the throw on a couple of those shots. But, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? There's a lot of talent. Guillaume, oh my God, she was brought in to do the Angels, and she was on that stage, and I think she had a difficult time. But maybe she was underused, or maybe she wasn't feeling the vibes. They were tough vibes to feel. Good Lord. I think if you were to just sort of ply most people with enough drinks and to really get some deep honesty, I think you could probably get about 100% of the people saying, yeah, that was a dark film. That was a tough film. But, it was Leica's first film. There was a lot on the line. The tensions were high. I think Henry needed a big hit. I don't think he had tasted a big hit in a while. And so it was a hit. Now we know. The world at large likes Coraline, and that's validating, I think, for the people that worked on it. And you don't want your toil, your work, to be in vain, and it certainly was not, I think. Anyway, pulling into my driveway. I think I've said enough about Coraline. Hasta luego.